For more than a year, world champion Ayrton Senna and teammate Alain Prost have enjoyed unprecedented success in Formula One. Their combined talents have propelled the Marlboro McLaren team to the pinnacle of the sport, more often than not waging a private battle for victory. But all is not well with Team McLaren. There is friction between these two great drivers. The root of the problem goes back to Portugal last year, when Senna drove Prost to the wall in a high-speed game of intimidation. But Prost took the victory, then raged at his teammate. The two made a pact at San Marino last month that whoever won the start would lead the race. Senna broke that promise by passing Prost at the second turn. Since then, they have not spoken. 2 weeks ago at Monaco, the McLaren crew cheered Senna's victory, while Prost fell victim to a series of misfortunes to a degree the global press found outrageous and absurd. Chief among Prost's problems was his former teammate, 41-year-old René Arnoux, who held Prost at bay and blocked his progress at every turn, creating a gap between the McLaren drivers at the front. After erasing much of the deficit, Prost was then forced to set out a log jam at the Lowe's hairpin when Nelson Piquet's Yellow Lotus tangled with Andrea de Cesaris, creating a ludicrous scene.
Sit down, this traffic jam. How I hate to be late. It hurts my motor to go so slow. Time I get home, my supper will be cold. Damn, this traffic jam.
Muddled in the traffic, Prost fell 30 seconds behind, while Senna coasted to an easy win and a tie with his teammate for the championship lead. But in the hot, thin air of Mexico City, Prost's fortunes could change. A year ago, Mexico was the scene of a convincing victory for the Frenchman, a feat he would no doubt like to repeat to regain control of the title chase. Will Senna and Prost settle their differences in Mexico? Will Senna continue his winning ways en route to defending his title? Or is Prost resigned to playing second fiddle? What Team McLaren may need in Mexico is a good stiff drink. Mexico City, the world's highest major metropolitan area at over 7,300 feet, and it's most populated at more than 20 million inhabitants, tens of thousands of whom have turned out for today's Formula One Mexican Grand Prix. Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha, welcoming you to Mexico City and the beginning of a critical three-race North American tour for these Formula One cars. Beginning here in Mexico, moving next Sunday to Phoenix, Arizona for the inaugural U.S. Grand Prix, and finishing up 3 weeks from now with the Canadian GP in Montreal, Canada. With me to call the action here in Mexico is old friend David Hobbs. And David, unless someone steps up to stem the tide of Team McLaren, by the time we get to Canada, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost may well have this series in a stranglehold.
Well, Bob, it'd be nice to say that the new non-turbocharged formula is working. The entire field is only covered by 2.7 seconds, except for the dynamic duo. If we were timing this the old-fashioned way with a stopwatch, some of these cars would be stacked up. We've got two pairs of absolutely identical times. So it's going to be very, very close. However, there is one very important factor which determines this race, and with that is John Bisignano down on the particularly dodgy part of this track.
You're looking at one of the most challenging corners in Formula One. It's called the Peraltada, a 165-mile-an-hour flat-out curve. Another characteristic about this Mexican circuit is the fact that it's located at some 7,300 feet above sea level, and even the most sophisticated Formula One cars are not immune to the effect of that altitude. When the drivers first came here, they thought that the track was gritty and dirty and didn't have any hold to the surface. But after a while, the engineers figured out that it was simply the altitude. Some 24% less downforce on the aerodynamic surfaces just because of the fact that there's less air. Now you might say, that's simple, crank in more wing, generate the downforce. Well, the problem there, the normally aspirated engines also are dealing with the altitude and less air, and therefore less powerful. They just couldn't push that bigger wing through the air, no straight line speed. Well, the final equation adds up to the fact that 26 drivers, Formula One drivers, the best in the world, are going to be slipping and sliding all around this Mexican circuit for the next hour and a half. It makes for some very interesting racing. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks, John. And one of the more interesting aspects of this race will be the return of Gerhard Berger. Just 5 weeks after his appalling crash and fire at Imola, Italy, Berger is back behind the wheel of a Ferrari. We'll show you where he qualified and introduce the rest of the field when we return to Mexico City after this. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico is brought to you by Acura Legend and Integra. Precision-crafted performance exclusively at your Acura dealer. By Olympus, makers of 35mm cameras and video. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. Welcome back to Mexico City, where we've certainly had an interesting introduction to the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico. Our race has been brought to a dead stop. You see the pit crews making their way down to the Peraltada, the sweeping right-hand turn that is the final turn before the cars hit the front straightaway. We are now in a red flag condition. The entire race has been brought to a stop, probably because we have 3 race cars off the track in assorted incidents in the first 2 laps. Now, the cars have stopped in the turn, so they have not completed 2 full laps, and we'll have to wait and see how many laps will remain in this race when they do restart.
Well, it was going to be a 69-lap race. They'll probably take out at least one of those laps, but then, of course, we're going to have another parade lap, and we'll have to have some sort of mandatory stop here for a period of time, for a certain period of time, and there were all sorts of cars off there. Both the Laras were off, one of the Brabhams, one of the Ligiers, and Satoru Nakajima got his car high-sided on the edge of the road, so he was stuck, and those are the only ones we saw. We don't know if there was anybody else out there as well. Seems pretty desperate to stop it.
That was the kind of action we expect to see all day. Now let's go back and set the original row assignments for you and give full credit to everybody who made the field. As we said before, with his 33rd career pole, tying the late Jim Clark for the record, his 7th straight breaking a record, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, the world champion in his McLaren Honda. To his left will be Alain Prost, the Frenchman, his teammate, the quickest in the morning warm-ups. In row 2 will be Nigel Mansell of Great Britain, 2nd quickest this morning in the 7-speed Ferrari. Next to him will be Italy's Ivan Capelli, carrying our in-car camera in the new Leighton House March Judd. Row 3 will be Riccardo Patrese of Italy in the Williams Renault. To his left will be Gerhard Berger, the real man of the hour here, driving with bandaged hands in a Ferrari 5 weeks after his terrible Imola accident. Row 4 will be Michele Alboreto with a great qualifying performance in the new Tyrrell Ford. To his left will be Terry Boutsen of Belgium in the 2nd Canon Williams Renault. In row 5, Stefano Modena of Italy in the highest Pirelli shod cars, all those in front of him wearing Goodyear tires, Modena in the Brabham Judd. To his left, Derek Warwick of the USF&G Arrows team. In row 6, Olivier Griard at 30, the oldest rookie in Formula One, the Frenchman driving for the French Ligier team. To his left, Andre De Cesaris of Italy in the BMS Dallara Ford. Row 7 will be Sandro Nannini of Italy in the Benetton machine with the exact same qualifying time, Dr. Jonathan Palmer of Great Britain in the Tyrrell. Row 8 will be Satoru Nakajima in the Camel Lotus Judd. To his left, Philippe Alliot of France, a good performance in the Lola Lamborghini. Row 9 will be Gabriele Tarquini replacing Philippe Streff in the AGS Ford and doing very well. Next to him, 24-year-old British sensation Johnny Herbert in a Benetton Ford. Row 10 will be Alex Caffi of Italy after a great race at Monaco in the 2nd Team Dallara. Next to him, Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the 2nd Team Brabham. Row 11, Stefan Johansson making the first Grand Prix start for the new Onyx Ford team. Next to him, Pierre Martini in the new SCM Minardi Ford. Row 12 will be Christian Danner of Germany, that is, in the Real Ford. Next to him, Eddie Cheever of the United States, whose qualifying effort was cut short by rain this afternoon in the 2nd Arrows. And in the last row, how the mighty have fallen. From France, René Arnoux, a 7-time Formula One winner, in the last row in his Ligier, next to 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet in the 2nd Lotus. There you see Stefano Modena making his way around. He was one of the cars that originally went off. And while we have a moment, we'd like to tell you a little bit more and give you an in-car look at the way this 2.7-mile, 14-turn racetrack lays out at 7,330 feet of altitude. Here's David Hobbs.
There you see a map of the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez here in Mexico City. 2.747 miles, 14 turns, about 20 gear shifts per lap, and at just over 125 miles an hour, quite fast. And just a tad bumpy, as we'll see from this video of yesterday afternoon's qualifying by Ivan Capelli, as he goes down the front straight at about 186 miles an hour in 6th gear. Approaching turn 1, the Solana complex. Hard on the brakes down to 2nd, as he swings right, left, and right again, staying in 2nd gear. Snatches 3rd on exit, up to 4th and then 5th again as he reaches about 155 miles an hour as he comes down to the next complex of corners. Hard on the brakes again, down to 3rd as he swings left into the Estadio. Right, and at this point they get pretty close to that outside wall, not much runoff area there. Stays in 3rd, down to 2nd. A double apex right-hander here, stays in 2nd, snatches 3rd, and now he's going into the S's. Every one of these corners is just a bit quicker than the one before as he picks up speed, constantly going up to the gearbox, up to 4th as he goes to this big bumpy right-hander there, long left-hander, laps one of the Lotuses there, a long fast right-hander, snatches 5th gear here, very, very fast left-hander as he's onto the back straight, up to 6th gear, and again about 185 miles an hour. Now coming into the Peraltada, a lift down to 5th, an absolute agony as this car bumps its way through here at about 165 miles an hour. And you have just gone with Ivan Capelli on the lap that put him 4th on the grid for today's race.
And we now have good news for you. If you lost some time switching over from the Indy 500 to pick up the Formula One Grand, waving that flag. It'll be like a red flag in front of a bull. There's the green light. We're away. Again, a very slow start. Off the line for Senna. Mansell tries to squeeze between, but Prost chops him off. Remember, they get up to incredible speeds. There goes Capelli from the pit lane. Incredible speeds before they make a sharp right-hand turn, and look at them fan out trying to find a line.
Alain Prost made a superb start that time. In fact, he slightly jumped the gun, but we let him on this one. Into the Solana complex again. Very, very slippery here, and of course, even with the tyre warmers on, the tyres still aren't up to real racing temperature.
And they are 3 wide in those S's in the Solana corner, the sun-drenched corner. And now they'll make a fast run down this chute and enter the tightest part of the racetrack, the Estadio section, where the stadiums, grandstands surround the track. And look at the cars all over the track.
The long lens space looking better. Look, Nelson Piquet staggering on the back. So there we see Prost in the lead. Right behind him is Ayrton Senna. 2 Ferraris behind him, and that is in fact Berger, who sneaked up to 3rd spot. I guess with Prost making a good start and that empty space in front of him, he really made best use of it. And right behind him are the 2 Williams of Patrese and Boutsen, which I'm not quite sure, and Alboreto going well there too. Derek Warwick up there.
Now the cars, you see the S's get longer and wider, and the cars go faster and faster until they file out right about here onto the short back straightaway, reaching speeds in excess of 170 miles an hour before they reach this point.
Senna's in the lead.
Senna is in the lead as they go through Peraltada, the sharp banked right-hander, and the G-forces on these drivers are simply extraordinary. Look at the lead for the McLaren twins as the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, followed by Nigel Mansell, tries desperately to keep them in sight.
Berger is really using all the road there, as you saw, plus a little bit more on the exit of that corner.
And now they get up to in excess of 185 miles an hour before hard braking here for the right-hander. And you see Alain Prost. After Monaco, he wants to stay right on his teammate's gearbox.
Well, he must have done some pretty fancy driving somewhere, because Alain Prost did make a tremendous start. There's no doubt about it. And he had the best side of the road. That looks like one of the Delaras again.
And you see how dirty that part of the racetrack is. If you're off the racing line here in Mexico, you get absolutely no grip at all. Back up front, Prost trailing Ayrton Senna. They are tied for the lead in the World Drivers' Championship by virtue of 2 victories for Ayrton Senna and 3 straight second-place finishes for Alain Prost.
Now there's 2 different Goodyear tire compounds here, Group C and a B and a C compound. The C being the slightly softer one, and rumour had it that Alain Prost was going to try that this afternoon, but we don't really know who ended up using what.
There has been a great effort by the McLaren team to smooth over the differences between these 2 drivers this weekend. They even brought out 5-time world champion Juan Manuel Fangio of Argentina, regarded by many as the greatest Formula One driver of all time, and put him on a podium at a press conference with Senna and Prost. But still the questions came. Are you guys talking to each other? To Prost, what will your plans be at the end of the year? Prost says, within 2 weeks, I'll decide whether I will leave McLaren or not. Cars at single file of better than 180 miles an hour. Now they get a little bit skittish as they brake hard. And Ayrton Senna, the world champion, leads into turn 1.
The McLaren, there's no doubt about it, the Honda engine has got more horsepower than most of the other cars here. But there's also no doubt about it, the chassis sorting on this car with the engineering powers they've got, and of course the incredibly scientific driving of these 2 codes does make this car, if you watch it over these bumps, it is so much better than pretty well any other car here. The Ferrari doesn't look too bad at all, but some of the cars look really, really hard to drive.
Virtually all the drivers are predicting that they will bend up race cars this weekend. Of course, none will admit that they will be the ones who will do it. We have had 5 major off-course excursions. Fortunately, no cars damaged and no drivers hurt. But it is a very slick racetrack. As John mentioned earlier, the air at the altitude of 7,300 feet is quite thin. They don't get the downforce. Without the turbochargers that they had last year, they don't get the horsepower to pull those cars through the air and force them to the racetrack. And now Capelli is into the pits.
And that's pretty bad luck. Oh, Ivan Capelli, what a rough afternoon he's had.
What a shame. Capelli, one of 9 Italians in the field. There are 5 British drivers, 4 Frenchmen, 2 Brazilians, 1 one each from Austria, Belgium, Japan, Germany, Sweden, and of course the United States, with Eddie Cheever, who will certainly be the star in Phoenix next week. Let's go down to John Bizignano.
Ivan Capelli actually came in with no power whatsoever. The engine was not running, and when he went out of the pit lane, he had a heck of a time getting the car underway. It sounded as though he may have had it in the wrong gear, but then when he went around the back end, the people were concerned that actually the engine may have been misfiring. He did have it in the correct gear, but the engine was misfiring. They have not taken the engine cover off, and in fact, they are working on the rear, left rear and the right rear corners as if there may be a differential or possibly a clutch problem. But certainly one of the most frustrating Grand Prix ever in the young Italian's career. We will get back to you with the exact report as soon as we have the information. Back to you, Bob.
We are back up front with the all-McLaren battle. First and second place, Ayrton Senna, followed by teammate Alain Prost. Senna, 29 years old, of course the defending world champion. Behind him, Prost, at 34 years of age, says he wants to end his career with an all-French team. French engine, French chassis, French engineers and designers. And everyone is speculating as to whether or not that time has come for one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time.
Well, he's hanging on pretty well this afternoon to Ayrton Senna. Senna seems to be just a little bit quicker through some of the fast stuff, but of course that's always deceptive because obviously the cars do spread out in the faster corner.
Good luck there at Gerhard Berger, just 5 weeks off of an incredible accident. He was driving with heavily bandaged hands. He needs help getting into his race car. He is also using extra fireproof equipment.
It's hard to believe that Gerhard Berger is going to be able to do the full race distance this afternoon without having some sort of problem with his hands, because this is a particularly bumpy track, as you saw from the in-car shot earlier on, and the way the steering wheel is going to be moving in his hands, it's going to be very, very uncomfortable for him, because he has got some pretty nasty blisters going into the race.
Without putting too fine a point on it, the right hand of Gerhard Berger is virtually all meat. The skin has been burned away. As I say, he's driving with heavily bandaged hands, and it is remarkable that he is even out here at all. But as you say, David, it's a long race. Even though he is shifting with his fingertips rather than with the palm of his hands, Gerhard Berger is out there. Notice also the new Ferrari bodywork with the traditional airbox behind the driver's head. We'll be back to Mexico City in a moment. In Mexico, you saw an in-car shot from Ivan Capelli's car on tape. This is the actuality of Ivan Capelli's car. David, things do not look good for him.
No, I saw one of the mechanics lean over and grab hold of that drive shaft there, and it doesn't seem to be attached at one of the ends, so they're working frantically on the car. But obviously in Formula One, if you lose that much time, you pretty well kiss the whole afternoon goodbye. Meanwhile, Mansell has really wound in Gerhard Berger, his teammate. And then right behind those are the two Williams cars. So the first 4 cars are 2 10-cylinders, 2 12-cylinders, and 2 more 10-cylinders. And it looks like Formula One with the new 3.5-litre normally aspirated engine. The way to go is lots of cylinders.
This has been a good city for Honda-powered cars. Back in 1965, Mexico City was the site of the first victory for a Honda engine Formula One car in the hands of Richie Ginther. David, I believe you know a little bit about those early Hondas.
Well, I didn't drive the very early ones, but I did drive the V8 air-cooled engine and the V12 car that Surtees won at Monza with in 1967. I drove that same car, or similar car, the same year at Monza.
You're watching 35-year-old Riccardo Patrese running in the 5th position at this point. Patrese, of course, now the most experienced man in Formula One racing. At the age of 34, he recorded his 177th Formula One start early this year in Rio de Janeiro here on ESPN. It took Graham Hill, the former record holder, to his 46th year to rack up 176 Formula One starts, as it did Jacques Lafitte, who shared that record with him.
Right now you mentioned, I think today is in fact told Ricciardo's 180th race, which is a pretty serious record in Formula One.
A lot of years behind the wheel and a lot of races for Riccardo Patrese.
Being harried by my old teammate Thierry Boutsen, also in the Renault-engined Williams. They've got new engines coming later on in the year. Mansell trying to go down the outside, or the inside, of Gerhard Berger there as they go into turn 1.
I think we may have had a change of position up front as Mansell got by Berger. There you see the Ferraris going out of your picture. Once again, we're using a Mexican television feed, so we can't always tell them which cars we want to look at. There go the 2 McLarens out of your picture. Coming up from behind, you'll see the number 27 of Nigel Mansell has taken 3rd from teammate Gerhard Berger.
That car we saw at the back there, that is Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton, which is a Ford V8 engine car, going very well, but of course they're waiting very, very anxiously for their new car engine combination to come. They can't use the new car till they get the new engine. The new engine at the moment has some reliability problems. It's a very small, neat package, and according to all the people at Ford and Benetton, gives very, very good horsepower, and they're hoping it's going to be competitive with the Honda V10. But a lot of other people say that to do well now, you're going to have at least 10 seconds. So we'll see.
Let's go back down to the pits and John Visigliano.
I think you have to compliment our cameraman. You cannot get any closer to a Formula One pit stop than what you're seeing right now on ESPN. What has gone wrong is the left drive shaft pulled away from the gearbox on the march. They tried to just stuff it back in, but now they've had to take away the upper link of the suspension and the tie rod to the shock absorbers to get it far enough out to press back in. This very determined Leighton House March team, they're not giving up. Ivan Capelli has not gotten out of the car. They will return to this Mexican Grand Prix if they have to rebuild the entire gearbox and left side drive shaft. We'll let you know how it all turns out, but right at the moment, we are at about a 7-lap pit stop. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, John. And one of the Dallaras now coming in. Look like Andrea De Cesaris making typical Formula One pit stop. You see all of the people down there. It is a real crowd. 3 men at each corner to put new tires on that car, and there were not tire stops expected here in Mexico on this slick racetrack.
Well, maybe it was something else. Of course, in Formula One, when a driver pulls into the pits, the crew automatically change all the tires, whether or not that's required. And sometimes while they're doing that, the driver's saying, excuse me, that's not the tires I want, it's an engine or something else.
Look at the lead now as the McLarens pull away. Ayrton Senna up front being hounded by his teammate, Alain Prost. And it's probably fair to say that of these two, if it were up to this crowd of tens of thousands here in Mexico, Prost would be the winner. I went out on the far reaches of the circuit 2 days ago during early practice, and 3 drivers brought the crowd to its feet. One was Alain Prost, one was Nigel Mansell, and the third, of course, was Gerhard Berger.
Nigel Mansell's making a bit of ground on these two. Obviously, Ayrton Senna's an extremely canny race driver, as is Alain Prost, and there's no way these two are going to extend themselves and risk either crashing into each other, into something else, or Nigel Mansell, if he should in fact wind them in. This could be a bit of an interesting situation here. They've got the Dallara to get round. He's not going to let them get round either. No, he blocked, but now this is going to be interesting. This is going to let Nigel catch right up, as well, of course, as giving Prost a bit of breathing room too.
Now Senna forces his way by on the outside, and Prost right on his gearbox. This is going to be a great battle between two of the best drivers you'll ever want to see.
Now this means that Mansell is going to catch the Dallara as they come to the faster of these S complexes, and if he gets caught there, that'll make a horrible difference to the gap between himself and the Ferrari.
So traffic, as it so often does in racing, could make the difference here the early going in Mexico. By now, of course, everyone knows that Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna are not the closest of friends. In fact, they are barely speaking to each other. So we asked their team manager, Ron Dennis, who keeps very tight rein over the entire McLaren operation, what is the current situation between your drivers?
Well, there's a little tension there at the moment, mainly because they're on equal points. We're 3 races into the season, and it's reasonably apparent at the moment that we have a competitive edge on most of the other teams, which tends to focus everything on an outcome being between either Alain or Ayrton. It's a little bit like marriage, though. It's a lot of people married, but for it to work, you have to work hard at it, and it's a common objective, and that's the problem. They've both got a common objective of being the world champion, and it's just a tense, difficult situation, but in control.
Well, perhaps it is controlled, perhaps it is not. We have a little video break up there from our Mexican TV feed on the very distant part of this 2.7-mile race course, named for 2 of Mexico's great driving heroes, the brothers Ricardo and Pedro Rodriguez, both tragically taken in racing accidents, and both national heroes here in Mexico. Ayrton Senna remains your leader. Prost, his teammate, drops back just a bit. Racing continues live here on ESPN. We'll be back in a moment. There's plenty of motor racing coming your way on this big Memorial Day weekend here on ESPN. Tomorrow, Monday, May 29th, coming to you live sports car racing. The IMSA Camel Grand Prix from Lime Rock Park. Live 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific here on ESPN. Another great battle between Nissan, Porsche, and Jaguar. Jaguar reported ready to bring out their new secret weapon, a turbocharged V6, in lieu of their screaming, normally aspirated V12. So look for that one, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, live tomorrow here on ESPN. Here in Mexico, you're watching Ayrton Senna gradually drawing away from teammate Alain Prost, as he has done so often. Such a controversial character is Ayrton Senna, who has given his marriage, indeed his whole life, to the goal of being Formula One world champion. And now that he has won it, he is now setting about the business of defending it with no less intensity than he won it a year ago.
Well, of course, the combination there we see, that's Jonathan Palmer's car, I believe, in the pits. Jonathan's had a bit of an up and a down weekend, but went very well at some of the stages. Of course, his teammate, Alboreto, at the moment, is going extremely well. But Ayrton Senna is the original take-no-prisoners driver. He just has the most unbelievable attitude towards his driving. He not only wants to win the World Championship, he wants to win every race and every practice and every qualifying session. And
In fact,
as you say, totally dedicated to it.
He won his very first race back in 1973, racing karts. That's karts with a K, not go-karts as we know them in our backyards here in the United States. Full-blown racing karts. Won his first event as the Pan American champion in 1977. Reportedly didn't like driving race cars when he first got in them. He liked the feel of the very tiny karts. But boy, has he ever made his name in Formula One.
And of course, when he came to England from the go-karts, he went into Formula Ford, then Ford 2000, Formula 3, and absolutely cleaned up in every single one of those classes in a way that nobody else has done since. Alain Prost, his teammate, in fact, is now being wound in slowly but surely by Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari, which seems to be going very well so far this afternoon, which of course has got a great following here in Mexico. A lot of Ferrari flags being waved by this crowd, and of course the Ferrari name having just that magic appeal that somehow appeals to everybody who's involved in either racing or any high-performance car. Nowadays, of course, to any collector who's got a few bucks to spend on one.
Your leader at this point, Ayrton Senna. Prost runs second. Nigel Mansell third in the Ferrari. Gerhard Berger is fourth. Ricardo Patrese fifth, followed by his Williams teammate Terry Boutsen. And Kelly Alboreto and Steady in seventh. Alessandro Nannini in eighth. Derek Warwick in the first of the USF&G Arrows in ninth position. And Gabriele Tarquini doing very well, running 10th right now in the AGS4. A severely underpowered car, not with the aerodynamics of some of the more well-established teams, but Tarquini doing very well as a stand-in for Philippe Streff, the Frenchman who was injured very badly in a pre-race accident down in Rio back in March.
Olivier Gouillard doing well too in the first of the Ligiers. Stefan Johansson in the Onyx, which managed to get into the race this time for the first time. They have to pre-qualify every race. They go out at 8:30 on Friday morning for an hour, the pre-qualifiers. Johansson, the first time he's got in the race, and running in a pretty strong 11th spot. He's in fact overtaken Gouillard now. Johansson's 11th. Gouillard's 12th. Martin Brundle's climbed up to 12th, 13th. Eddie Cheever's 14th. Nakajima 15th. Modena is 16th, who was involved in that first lap crash. He's now driving his spare car, so we don't quite know what could be wrong there. Alex Kapkin, the Killar, is 17th. Nelson Piquet is 18th in the Camel Lotus. 19th is René Arnoux. And last is Christian Danner in the Real. Or 20th is Christian Danner.
As we watch Ayrton Senna making short work of the field here, Prost coming into the picture at the back. You mentioned Stefan Johansson, David. This is, of course, the first race for the Onyx team, and the joke around the pit lane was that Stefan's going to ask for overtime. He's not had this much time in the race car before. Known as Steve Johnson back in Sweden for all of the time he spent racing in the minor formula in Great Britain. He speaks excellent English. A real lady killer with a great sense of humor. Stefan Johansson, good to have him back in Formula One with his 8th different team in 8 seasons of Formula One racing. So he has quite a few frequent flyer miles on his ticket as well.
And he's got some pretty good credentials there in terms of teams. He drove for this team here, McLaren, just 2 years ago. Spent 2 years with Ferrari before that. So it's not as if he's driven a lot of old junkers. He has been with some of the absolute best teams. And Alain Prost here is definitely being hounded by Nigel Mansell. Mansell closing that gap.
Let's go down now to John Bizignano with news from pit road.
A little bit earlier, David, you mentioned the fact that some of these cars were going out on different compounds. Between Pirelli and Goodyear, we actually have 6 different compounds represented on the track at this time. Now, Prost did go out with the softer Cs, and believe it or not, and maybe you could elaborate on this, David, Senna went out with the left-hand side of the car on Bs and the right-hand side of the car on Cs. That could be a bit of an imbalance as far as I'm concerned. Also, Ivan Capelli out of the car. They push the March into the garage. The March team is finished here in Mexico. Back to you.
Well, there we see a great battle between Derek Warwick and in 10th place, and Tarquini right behind him. One of the Williams is pulled over on the left there.
I see a dark helmet. That might be Terry Boutsen. There you see it from the rear. What a difficult time. The Williams with Renault V10 power were expected to challenge McLaren this year. They are very similar cars mechanically. Thus far, the Williams team just has not been able to get it together. And it is indeed Terry Boutsen from Belgium who climbs out, a very frustrated driver.
Extremely frustrated. They've got a new car and a new engine, well, a new cylinder heads coming on later on in the year, and they're all waiting for those engines to arrive. To go back to what John said, it looks, unfortunately for Alan Prost fans, as if Ayrton Senna made exactly the right choice. He put the harder B compound tyres on the left-hand side of the car, but with the predominance of right-hand turns here, especially that last very long, very fast corner, his left-side tyres are probably standing up better than Alan Prost's all-C compound, which probably are letting him down as he tries to go through these fast corners, as the temperature has definitely stayed up. In fact, it's getting warm as the afternoon goes on, and if it gets warmer and as the race goes on, Ayrton Senna's choice will probably prove to be even better than it's showing so far.
Strategic choice then for Prost. What does he do? Hit for new tires?
He will hang in there, I'm sure, in second spot, unless, of course, he has to. It could be that if he tries to push it too much harder to make up ground on Ayrton Senna, that he would, in fact, blister probably the left front tire.
And so the battle continues, but hardly a battle at all for this man, Ayrton Senna. Originally, Ayrton Senna da Silva adopted his mother's maiden name, Senna, as his racing name back in 1983. Now, here is a battle between one of the new Minardis and one of the Benettons. Looks like Johnny Herbert going by. There is Frank Williams, founder of the Williams Grand Prix team, paralyzed from the waist down in a streetcar accident in France several years ago. But a man who's lost none of his verve for Formula One.
A guy of tremendous strength of character, and here comes Gerhard Berger into the pits.
Oh my, the fourth place Ferrari make Gerhard Berger, and we can only wonder whether it's a mechanical problem with the car or in fact his burned hands have let him down.
It looks like it's coasting. It looks like he's trying to get out. That is car number...
That's Johansson in the Onyx. That's Stefan. As we go back to the Ferrari making its forlorn way down pit road. Now, normally they'll come down this pit road at a blistering pace. Obviously, there is something terminally wrong with the Ferrari. Hey, John, what's up?
Gerhard Berger coasted the Ferrari into the pit. They are usually moving very quickly when he does arrive, and there's absolutely no hysteria whatsoever from the mechanics. It looks like Gerhard Berger simply did not go the distance. They undid the steering wheel so he could get out of the car, took off the seatbelts. They did not raise any part of the engine or look at any type of the suspension whatsoever. Gerhard Berger, his trainer, now attending to him in the garage area. This is the trainer that travels all over the world with several of the drivers. They're getting him out of his helmet. He is extremely pale from what I can see underneath his visor. Gerhard Berger out of the Mexican Grand Prix, and I think very glad to be so.
There you see him taking off that strap. He had a strap around his arm to hold his head up. A lot of the drivers here, there's such high G-forces that these Formula One cars develop, especially with so many long, fast right-handers, that some of them are wearing the straps. Others didn't like them because with the left-hand corners, when you want to sort of lay into the corner like a motorcyclist and you cock your head over to the left, of course you couldn't when it's tied up.
There you see Pierluigi Martini, the young Italian who is being lapped as Ayrton Senna begins to knock off his pursuers. You're watching live the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico, and we'll be back after this.
I don't know.
Track Facts are brought to you by USF&G Asset Management, a network to better manage money, people, property, and equipment. There are two places you're likely to find wood in a Formula One pit. One is to ask somebody for a match. The other is to check where the bodywork of the race car meets the racetrack. For years, crews tried a variety of materials, from rubber to plastic to titanium, looking for something that could rub against the track and wear away evenly, maintaining the seal of the airflow that allows aerodynamic devices like this wing off the March cars to work. Finally, someone decided, let's try wood. And the result is a dense laminate known as jab rock. And it's absolutely perfect. It wears evenly, seals off the air under the wing, and it's a lot cheaper than titanium. And this is a live pit stop. Alain Prost has come in to change his tires. They've done it in about 7 seconds. He is back on the racetrack. John?
The tires are absolutely blistered. The left front is totally shredded from the blisters that were created around that very fast, sweeping right-hander just before the pit straight. David, you called it perfectly. Back to you.
Well, there, of course, Alain Prost is normally so conservative with his setup and also with his driving, but as we saw at the beginning of the race, I mean, he hung right on there to Ayrton Senna for those first 10 laps or so, and of course, he paid the penalty by choosing the quicker compound, but unfortunately led to his ultimate downfall. And, yeah, it did, in fact, blister the left compound. The funny thing is that on the grid, Ayrton Senna, he did 2 warm-up laps, came onto the grid and had them take the tires off his car and put 4 more tires on. Now, whether they put the same 4 back and rebalance them, or whether he changed the tires, we don't know. All we know is they took the tires away behind the building and they came back with 4 other tires. Were they the same ones, or did he, in fact, make a snap decision on those 2 warm-up laps before the green flag? I think I'll just change to the quicker compound. Maybe a bad mistake. Obviously made a mistake, whatever he did.
Obviously a very frustrated man, and right now the 5th place runner in this race. Ayrton Senna, your leader. Nigel Mansell moves up to 2nd. Ricardo Patrese inherits 3rd, followed by Michele Alboreto, having a sterling day for Italy in the Tyrrell. Prost is now 5th. 6th, Sandro Nannini. Derek Warwick in the Arrows up to 7th, followed by Gabriele Tarquini, and in 9th place, Olivier Griard. So some of the young drivers in Formula One coming on strong. As you look down there at one of the Dallaras, that's Alex Caffey.
One young driver who's not doing as well as I thought he would do today is Johnny Herbert. He's languishing back there in 20th position. He's a lap down already, not going anything like as well as his teammate Alessandro Nannini in the other car, who's now in 6th spot.
And way off of the turn. This is onto the backstretch through those very high-speed S's we talked about. You see young Alex Caffey making his way around after a 4th place drive at Monaco. The Italians are cheering for this young man, born in Brescia, Italy, home of another great motorsports event, the Mille Miglia.
Mille Miglia, where old Mossy won it way back these 30-odd years ago. I was talking to his co-driver, Dennis Jenkinson, the other day, and they went for the last hour. They cruised between Brescia and Bologna at 170 miles an hour on the highway, back then in a Mercedes 300.
Now there you see Nelson Piquet, who, as we mentioned at the top of the show, had an absolutely abysmal qualifying performance. 26th, dead last in the field, narrowly avoiding missing his first Formula One race since 1982 in Detroit. Presently, Piquet shown in 15th position and on the lead lap.
Not having a much better day today than he was yesterday. For a guy that's making $6.odd million, he probably should be sticking his neck out a bit more, I don't know.
Well, he has been absolutely savage since the race in Monaco, particularly by the press in Great Britain, who say that for the kind of money that Nelson Piquet is getting, he should be doing much better. In fact, Peter Warr, the team manager, I think, tried to take some of the heat off of Nelson by saying, we haven't inspired him properly. We haven't given him what he needs to win. And a lot of people say the knock on Piquet has always been his heart is not in it if he doesn't know that he has a mechanical advantage over all of his teammates. But lacking a McLaren right now, Nelson Piquet is going to have to make do with his Lotus. And right now he's doing rather well, up from 26th to 15th position in the space of 21 laps or so.
But it is interesting to note that Lotus, a car that has such an incredible name over the years, second only to Ferrari in wins and prestige probably in Formula One racing. I mean, here he is duking it out with Alex Caffey in a Dallara, a car that no one's ever heard of, and they've hardly even heard of Alex Caffey yet. That's not to say that he won't, in fact, become quite a great driver. He's obviously very, very fast and determined. But he's the sort of guy that 3 years ago Nelson Piquet would have been lapping for about the 2nd time by now. There's Stefano Modena, another up-and-coming young Italian, just in front of these two. Modena, of course, driving the spare car, which definitely had a misfire at the beginning of this race, which put him behind his teammate Martin Brundle, who he had, in fact, out-qualified quite well.
This is a battle for 14th place on the racetrack. 25-year-old Alex Caffey holding off 36-year-old, 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet. And as that battle continues, we'll take a quick time out and return to our live coverage of the Grand Prix of Mexico. Mexico from Mexico City after this. All of us here at ESPN are enjoying the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico coming to you live, but we have even bigger things in store as we become host broadcasters for the first United States Grand Prix from Phoenix, Arizona, and that will be coming your way next Sunday, immediately following NASCAR's Budweiser 500. So set your clocks now. Next Sunday, beginning at 11:50 a.m. Eastern Time, you will see the Budweiser 500 from Dover Downs, Delaware, followed immediately by our live coverage of the U.S. Grand Prix from Phoenix, Arizona. We're all looking forward to that one. Right now, Ayrton Senna remains the leader, and his teammate, Alain Prost, has been demoted to 6th position by Sandro Nannini. If you're just tuning in after having watched today's Indy 500, we welcome you. And if you haven't been watching Indy, we will tell you that it was a great victory and an exciting one for Emerson Fittipaldi, who was passed by young Al Unser Jr. with 5 laps to go. Unser then crashed, but came back to finish second, followed by Raul Boesel, Mario Andretti, and look at this, A.J. Foyt finishes in 5th position at the Indy 500. So with Fittipaldi's victory, it has thus far been a great weekend from Brazil, and if Ayrton Senna can stay up top, Brazilians may sweep the 2 biggest motor racing events in the world this weekend. Now, we've talked about tires already, and John Bizignano has more on that story from the pits.
We're with Lee Gogg, the managing director of Goodyear International. Lee, we've had a little bit more action down here in the pits than you planned on, a little bit more than you wanted. What's the situation with some people being on a harder compound or a softer compound?
Well, the C compound, which was soft, we figured was a little marginal on left front because of this banked last turn. We thought we could run it, but the cloud cover hasn't come in, and it depends on how much air pressure, John, they build up. The air pressure on Berger and Prost was a little high. They blistered it. Right now, Nannini and Mansell are still on C's and doing fine. So it's a matter of how hard they're pushing through that last corner and how high their air pressure gets.
But do you think they will be able to go the distance? The people out there on C's, are they stuck on something that's a little bit too slippery for them now, or are they going to have to make a stop?
I would think if they've gone this far, the fuel load's coming down, they'll be all right.
Well, we'll know very soon, Lee. Back to you all in the booth.
And right now, diving through the turn that Lee Gogg was talking about is Ayrton Senna, our leader.
Yeah, well, Ayrton Senna, he didn't listen to that Lee Gogg. He put a B on his left front. He didn't have any of that stuff.
You see the number 8 car there, that's Stefano Modena, one of the guys who went off in the first aborted start of this race, making his way along in pretty good position right now. He is back in 13th position. And this is your leader, Ayrton Senna.
And, of course, if Ayrton Senna wins this race, as Emerson Fittipaldi won the Indy 500, it won't be a bad day for Marlboro either, or, for that matter, for Goodyear. Because Lee and the guys from Goodyear do a fantastic job at these Formula One races. They have to bring thousands of tires all over the world to these events, and they do an incredible job in supplying all these teams tires. And the guys that want to have Pirellis, they can't have them always, and of course Goodyear have to step in and fill the void, which is something I think most racers really do appreciate, the effort that Goodyear have put in all forms of racing over the years. I know that I certainly do.
Goodyear brought some 2,500 tires to supply the cars wearing Goodyears in this field. There are also a number of cars, and there you saw Modena's car going out of the picture, about to be lapped by Ayrton Senna. He is running on the Pirelli tires. They have but 13 Formula One cars as they return to the series after a couple of years' absence.
He did, in fact, qualify extremely well, Stefano Modena. He qualified 10th. By far the best Pirelli qualifier in the Brabham, new to Formula One again this season after a couple of years layoff. There we see him being put a lap down by Ayrton Senna. Whistles in front of him, doesn't give him much braking room there as they come into that turn 1 complex. Senna's got his head down now, like I say. He's a no prisoners taken type of driver, and he wants that bit of road, he just takes it.
And by so doing, Ayrton Senna laps all but 12 cars behind him. 13 cars on the lead lap, including this man, Ayrton Senna. We talked a bit earlier about what an ice-cold disposition does Ayrton Senna have. And And in recent weeks, I think the McLaren team has been trying to sort of do something to dispel that image. And a story leaked out along the pit road this weekend that Dennis and Senna had something of a private joke in a restaurant here in Mexico City over the weekend. Apparently, Ron found some of the local Mexican salsa, the spicy sauce they put on foods here, to be a little bit too hot for his taste. And Ayrton, sitting across the table from him, decided he would peel off $5,000 of his estimated $10 million annual retainer if Ron would eat the entire bowl. Team manager Ron promptly downed the entire bowl of salsa and asked for his $5,000.
But we didn't see him for 3 days.
No, that's true. He has had a
We can hear him coming.
bit of a pallid complexion from Ron Dennis this weekend. Of course, $5,000 is probably a tip for Ayrton Senna these days. Nevertheless, he leads and is about to come into another piece of change if he can hold on to win the Mexican Grand Prix. Plenty more racing action coming your way in a moment. Sports car racing tomorrow here on ESPN. You'll also see great horse racing. It's a holiday of thoroughbred racing here on ESPN. You'll see a $1 million racing doubleheader, the Jersey Derby, plus live coverage of the Metropolitan Mile, coming your way tomorrow, Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time, live from Garden State Park in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and from Belmont Park in Elmont, New York. So great thoroughbred action coming your way tomorrow. Here in Mexico City, as you watch Nigel Mansell making his way around on the legendary number 27 Ferrari, made famous by the late Gilles Villeneuve of Canada. Mansell running in second position behind Ayrton Senna, who is leading by about 6.5 seconds at this point. Ricardo Patrese has the Williams in third, followed by Michele Alboreto. Alain Prost now back up into fifth position. Remember, he made a tire stop after blistering his left front, dropped from second to sixth. He's now back to fifth, and he has set the fast lap of the race thus far on lap 23. Alain Prost at 1:21.246, which probably would have qualified him about sixth fastest in yesterday's qualifying session.
Now we see Nigel Mansell about to put Martin Brundle, his fellow English driver, away for a lap. Brundle decided to have just a bit of the draft off Nigel there. Or maybe he's not this year. Mansell, of course, with that 12-cylinder Ferrari engine, there's no doubt about it. The Ferrari is cranking out some serious horsepower this year, and he was very steady with Brundle through most of those corners, but once they hit that long front straight here in front of the commentary booth, he was able to pull up in using his draft, of course, a little bit, and split by him on braking for the end. There we see the gap between Senna and Mansell, 7.726 seconds, and a further 21.5 seconds back to Patrese, 6 seconds from him to Alboreto, and 5.5 back to Alain Prost, who has just cranked out the fastest lap of the race, which makes his 30th fastest lap in his career, thereby eclipsing Jimmy Clark's record by 2. Jimmy Clark always was the record holder of fastest laps in races at 28, and now Alain Prost has done 30, so he can't qualify so well. He doesn't seem to be able to beat his teammate actually in the race, but he can certainly put in some fast laps while he's coming second.
You see Mansell just completing the fastest turn, probably one of the fastest turns in Formula One, the Peraltada. And before the race, we asked Nigel Mansell, what does it take to do that last corner flat out?
That's quite easy, really. Complete stupidity, I guess. No, you obviously got to be calculating. You got to set your car up with a little bit of bias to a little bit of understeer, because if you have any kind of oversteer in the corner, you can just lose it and go off backwards.
And that is something that we saw about 5 times in practice, a variety of drivers going off, including Martin Brundle.
Well, that exclamation of mine right in the middle of Nigel's explanation there was caused by the fact that on the other monitor, Nigel was trying to lap Nakajima and had a bit of a nasty old tyre lock-up going into turn 1. And, of course, this is the sort of time, if he's using C's, like Lee Gobb told us he was using C's, if he locks one up badly like that, it could just be enough to set the rot in, apart, of course, of giving him tremendous vibration through the steering wheel, and he's still struggling to get past Nakajima, no doubt getting golly irate in only the way that an Englishman can.
You watch the car in some of these close-up shots from Mexican television and just watch the suspension work, watch the car bounce and the driver's helmet fly around. Now Mansell getting skittish there. That's one of the bumpiest parts of the racetrack, just entering this 165-mile-an-hour turn. And as he approaches the exit, they lift up onto the front straightaway and off of the banking, and there must be a tremendous feeling in the pit of their stomachs. Let's go down right now to John Bisignano with more from pit road.
You're both talking about how difficult it is to control a car around this autodrome, and one of the reasons there are so many bumps here in Mexico is the fact that, like Mexico City, the track is built on a dry lake bed. They actually shave the track at the beginning of every year and put down new pavement, but they have to put the pavement down in long enough so that it can cure before the race. So 4 months go by and there's a whole new set of bumps. They are so severe that the aerodynamics on a car can totally change. The airflow, when the car pitches up and down, can actually stall, just like an airplane. These wings will have some 700 pounds on them. If they stall out, it goes to 0. And as you say, Bob, the worst bumps on this circuit are leading into a 165-mile-an-hour corner where they don't want anything to stall. And it's happening to virtually every driver out there. Somewhat of a dangerous situation.
Nigel Mansell continuing to make his way around, now free of the Lotus of Nakajima. Still running in second position, but 8.1 seconds down to Ayrton Senna, who has now taken fast lap of the race at 1:20.897, 4/10 of a second faster than teammate Alain Prost.
Well, no doubt Alain Prost will be getting that news and digesting it inwardly, and we'll probably try and do something about it further on in the race. There we see quite a few of the cars strung out down the straight. There is Alain Prost as he swings into the S's there.
And you can see from that camera angle that those turns are banked just a little bit, a little camber to those turns as you approach the exit of the S's. Very, very fast part of the racetrack. David and I stood along the fence at that part of the race in yesterday's qualifying session to listen to where the drivers were shifting. Oh, and as it's a pit stop for Alain Prost. Prost is on pit lane again. The McLaren team is ready. He'll pass a short chicane here that they use to slow down these cars. But once he gets on the pit road, watch how quickly Alain Prost comes down the pit lane. And we'll put a clock on his pit stop.
Tires again, this is pretty amazing. That one didn't look too bad as it went out of view, but it's hard to tell.
Clock is at 9 seconds, 10 seconds, 11 seconds. A little trouble with the front right corner. Oh, 13, 14 seconds, 15 seconds before Alain Prost is away in a cloud of tire smoke and track dust. That is not a typical McLaren pit stop.
Not Alan's afternoon, I would say, one way or another, as his teammate goes by to put him a lap down.
And that will no doubt drop Alain Prost back beyond 8th position. In fact, I believe Prost might be the last man on the lead lap at this point, as you see the other McLaren of his teammate Ayrton Senna coming into the picture from behind. Now this might be interesting, as Ayrton Senna tries to overtake Prost, whose tires will have to come up to temperature, even though they use electric tire blankets to heat them up in the pits. Alain Prost is going to have mirrors full of Ayrton Senna momentarily.
Temptation makes you get all evil just to think about what he could do, doesn't it?
We expect a great battle here. While we have a moment, let's go down to the pit lane and John Bisignano once again.
We're with the Belgian driver Thierry Boutsen, who runs a Williams car. It doesn't run it as long as you want, Thierry. What took you out of the Mexican Grand Prix?
Well, remember 2 years ago I was leading the race here and I was stopped by electrical problem. Exactly the same happened today. It was a different car, different engine, everything different, but the same problem. Seemed that the problem is following here in Mexico.
At the beginning of the season, everyone had such high expectations for the combination of Thierry Boutsen, Ricardo Patrese, Renault, and Williams. Do you boys still think you can run with the McLarens and the Ferraris, or are you just going to keep plugging away at the development of the package you have?
Well, at the moment, everything is a little bit too new, and the engine is a little bit too new, and does not produce the same power as the McLaren, for example. But Renault is working very, very hard on it to get it done for the first European race in Le Castellet. I think we're going to have a very, very good engine there.
Well, Senna has just lapped Mr. Prost. I think he is in command here, but best of luck in Phoenix for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Back to the booth. They'll pick that up on the on-track action. Thierry Boutsen, the man who never sweats in Formula One. You're going to have your greatest test in Phoenix in 1 week's time. 115-degree track temperature there. Back to you, boys.
There, in fact, has been action on the racetrack. Ayrton Senna has passed teammate Alain Prost. He passed him easily, and it looks as though Derek Warwick's Arrows has pulled off the racetrack with problems as well.
Derek Warwick Tyrrell was indeed pulled off there, and of course Ayrton Senna was able to get Alain Prost before he was probably fully up to speed and fully comfortable with his new sets of tyres. Outbraked him at the end of the straight, and there's Nakajima.
Number 12, Nakajima. It looks like he's off in a big way. It looks like there may be fire in that car. A lot of smoke and steam coming from the back of Nakajima's Lotus, and he is off into the gravel.
We don't see where the car is. It's hard to tell. Now, is it down at the Perotada?
You see him climbing out. The smoke has stopped, so apparently everything is under control there. But Nakajima is done for the second time today.
Yeah.
Remember, on the first start, he spun and found himself sort of center punched up on the sod on the side of the racetrack, and now he has gone off for the second time as the woes of Team Lotus continue.
What sod was that? Anyway, here we see the two McLarens, nose to tail again, as it were, and, of course, in theory, Mr. Prost, at this stage, should really be able to unwind himself past his teammate because his tyres must be in better condition. And after all, he's now had 3 goes, so he should at least have the right combination of tyres on his car. There must have been something wrong with that last setup. I'm sure that John's beavering away down here trying to find out why he changed the second set. They looked okay from what we could see, but he should have the best tyres out there now.
Are you amazed, as I was, at how quickly Senna was able to catch and pass Prost? There was no fight at all, it seemed, on that straightaway.
Well, unfortunately, he came off the corner of the Perotada just a little bit quicker and maintained that all the way down the straight, although it is the sort of incident that could lead Alain Prost in a debriefing later on this evening to say, I think that Senna might have just a little bit more horsepower than him.
Which brings up an interesting point, because a lot of the writers have been saying that there is a difference between these two drivers. Alain Prost is a McLaren man using a Honda engine, while Ayrton Senna is a Honda man using a McLaren chassis. And after all of the problems they had last year, the accusations that Senna or Prost were getting better equipment in order to manipulate the championship, one has to wonder when Senna can pass that quickly, whether or not Prost has as much race car.
But of course, we're not privy to all sorts of things like their wing angles. I mean, it could be that Alain Prost is carrying just a little bit more wing, although from the way his tyres went away, one would assume he had actually got less wing, causing the car to slide around and, in fact, heat them up. But there we see, is that Eddie Cheever in the other car, 27. There's Nigel Mansell coming up to lap Eddie Cheever.
Mansell, the second-place car, the Ferrari, coming up to take Eddie Cheever, put him a lap down. At this point, we have 6 cars on the lead lap. Ayrton Senna, the leader, Nigel Mansell running second. Back at Mexico, Bob Varsha, David Hobbs with you, John Visignano on pit road and on live coverage of the Grand Prix of Mexico. This is Nigel Mansell running for Ferrari, his first full season with the famous Italian team of the Prancing Horse. Right now, he is running in second position, having lapped Eddie Cheever in the USF&G Arrows, but Mansell remains a woeful 11 seconds down to the man who has dominated this race, Ayrton Senna.
However, Nigel Mansell has just turned in the fastest lap of the race at a 1:20.85. So old Nige is obviously still pedaling that old Ferrari around pretty swiftly. And the automatic gearbox, or the semi-automatic gearbox that they have on this car, is hanging in there well. And he's not all that far behind. Well, he's 10 seconds behind now, so he's actually maintaining that gap pretty well between himself and Alain Prost. It's easy at this stage to say that it's Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna. It's easy to say at this stage that if Prost was to hardly score any points at all today, that this, of course, gives Senna an incredible leg up in the championship. Which, of course, in lots of ways it does, until you realise the extraordinary way, of course, they score the championship. Because at some stage, old Senna's going to win a race and immediately have to discard the whole 9 points for winning that race. So in some ways, all is not yet lost for anybody else.
That, of course, the ruling that resulted in Alain Prost setting a record with 105 points last year, but finishing second in the championship because he had to throw out a greater number of points than his teammate Ayrton Senna, who subsequently assumed the crown.
All jolly complicated.
On On this big Memorial Day weekend, there is a lot of racing going on all over the country. Emerson Fittipaldi has won a crash-filled Indianapolis 500, and Darrell Waltrip has added another World 600 crown in Charlotte, North Carolina. So congratulations to Darrell and Stevie. We'll be seeing you all next week from Dover with the Budweiser 500. Here in Mexico, Ayrton Senna is your leader. And I should also point out that we've had a couple of new additions to our ESPN auto racing team. Our producer, Jeff Hallis, who covers all of our Formula One events. He and his wife, Lisa, welcomed Jeffrey Scott Hallis into the world just a short time ago. And Terry Linger, former coordinating producer for motorsports for ESPN, and his wife, Louise, had little Christopher Roy. So don't let your boys grow up to be race drivers, fellas, but congratulations to one and all. And as they say in Mexico, salud, amor y pesetas. Health, love, and wealth in the future to you both. There you see Ayrton Senna, who is now just 10.5 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell, who, as David pointed out, has set fast lap of this Grand Prix of Mexico at 1:20.859, and he has shaved the slightest little edge off of that lead. But the battle right now is between Senna and the McLaren behind him of his teammate Alain Prost, who he lapped just moments ago. Looks as though Prost is really beginning to get the bit between his teeth, David.
He is indeed. He's picking up speed. Like I say, he really, at the moment, should be in the best shape tire-wise. That's Tarquini right in front of them. Tarquini, the only man still on the same lap as Ayrton Senna, who's running in 6th spot, and he's about to be put a lap down by Senna. And of course, when Prost overtakes Tarquini, that will take 6th place away from Tarquini.
Well, we've seen a lot of tire wear here today, David. You suppose Senna might be having a problem with his rubber?
Well, just looking at it there on that shot, as we see the sun shining on his tires, they look pretty good to me. I don't see any nasty black marks, black lines, or irregularities. And I guess his original choice of the harder compound for the left side of the car, the load-bearing side here at Mexico, obviously proved to be right.
Whoa, Nigel Mansell with a sudden plume of smoke from the engine in the Ferrari. Oh, my.
Well, that was the last fastest lap that Nigel Mansell was going to do. So Nigel Mansell does a 1:20.4 and goes fastest of all, but I would say not for many more laps.
Oh, what a disappointment as you see the smoke pluming out of the back of the Ferrari. We have been calling it engine trouble in the races at Imola and Monaco, where Nigel Mansell dropped out. But in fact, he said it was that electronically operated semi-automatic 7-speed gearbox. This time, no mistaking engine difficulty.
No, it's the day is run for Nigel. Very, very disappointing for him and all the Ferrari fans all around the world, because Ferrari are still struggling to get back into that absolute top winning position of Formula One that they've held for so many years. So many victories belong to Ferrari that they want to get back into that consistent winning form. And Nigel seems to be the man to do it, but the car unfortunately does let him down rather frequently.
Well, he will carry on it appears, until such point. Yeah, until such point as he cannot go any farther. Now, here he runs the risk of really breaking something serious in the engine, getting some fluid out there, at which point he loses traction at some 100, who knows how many miles an hour, and that could be a real problem.
Not only does he lose traction, but the next guy along loses traction as well. Maybe it's only on the overrun. Maybe it's just lost a piston ring or something. I don't know.
Well, he seems to be going slower and slower, checking his mirrors. You see him looking left and right. And so the day is done for Nigel Mansell, who will become, by my unofficial count, the 10th car, that is, to drop out of the Grand Prix of Mexico.
Well, obviously, as the Ferrari lost its fuel load, it was definitely starting to honk on there. As he cracked up a very, very fast lap there just before the demise of the engine. Now, it was a bit silly, Nigel, to go and take yourself all that way away. You've got to walk back now, fella.
There's the most expensive parking lot in Mexico right now. The Williams Renault and the Ferrari parked nose to tail out on the backside.
Meanwhile, they'll need the old police down there. There'll be a few souvenir takers down there as soon as this race is over.
Speaking of which, Ferrari says part of the problem they're having in determining what caused Gerhard Berger's accident in Imola was the fact that many of the car's parts were carried away by souvenir hunters. And they can't find the nose wing that allegedly came off and made the car uncontrollable.
Well, of course, the demise of Mansell and the fact that Alain Prost has passed Tarquini suddenly vaults Alain Prost, even after 2 stops. It now puts him back into 5th position.
And he will be 5th, and the first car 1 lap down, so to speak. We now have but 4 cars on the lead lap with the demise of Nigel Mansell's Ferrari. We'll be back to Mexico shortly. forget, coming your way next week, the inaugural United States Grand Prix from Phoenix, Arizona. There have been a lot of great things being said about the Phoenix Street Course, and we'll be there live next Sunday, June 4th, starting at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That will be immediately following the Budweiser 500 as the U.S. Grand Prix Formula One in North America coming your way here on ESPN. Don't miss it. We are the host broadcasters, which entitles us to the best seat at the table, and I certainly am looking forward to it. There you see our room with a view. No bathroom, no kitchen, nothing else, but you have a great view of the beautiful Hermanos Ricardo y Pedro Rodriguez Autodromo. How'd I get that out all right? Pretty good. Circuit here in Mexico City, and we hope you're enjoying the Formula One action. There you see the two McLarens who have been so much in the news lately. Ayrton Senna leading the race. Behind him, although he is just in second place on the racetrack, he is actually in sixth place overall, is Alain Prost, who has stopped twice for tires and is a lap down.
Well, I think it's pretty staggering, and says a lot for the driving skills of Ayrton Senna that he can still hold off Alain Prost, who at this stage has got to be the best shod horse out there. I mean, it can be no question about it. Now, of course, again, like I said earlier, you don't know what car setup they've got in the ways of wings and obviously horsepower. There's Riccardo Patrese, who, of course, is now running in a strong, well, relatively strong second spot, which would be good for Renault. He got a bit sideways there, going into the Peraltada. Maybe that car's not quite so good on the empty tanks.
Well, what a twitch. Derek Warwick had one of those yesterday, and it's only lightning reflexes that keep the car on the racetrack when it twitches like that. Imagine at 165 miles an hour with the G-loads in that turn trying to throw you all the way from Mexico out to Hawaii or somewhere. And all you can do is try to steer it straight.
And, of course, those bumps set them off so badly now. Now, for instance, Ricciardo is running with not much wing, and he's got the car just sprung a little bit on the stiff side as he loses fuel on that very bad bump on the approach to that corner. And, of course, these bumps on the approach to this corner, the car will become much, much more skitterish and will want to slide around a lot more. All sorts of things, of course, go into making a race car complete for the whole course of the race. From full of fuel, the track conditions change, and so many things come into play. And, of course, that's why they spend hours on Friday and Saturday doing all that practice and setting up.
Riccardo Patrese, 180th Formula One Grand Prix start with but 2 wins to show for it.
Very much a family man. Very first thing he does is always rings his, obviously he rings home if his wife doesn't come with him. And he also always rings his old dad back there in Italy to let him know how he got on.
Before the race, we talked to Riccardo and we asked him to comment on the power of his new Renault V10 engine.
Power is... You cannot talk about power if you don't put on the table also the aerodynamic of the car. And I have to say that I think mainly the power of our engine is okay. The engine is working very, very well. Renault did a fantastic job during the winter to make the program competitive and also quite reliable. We don't know if we have more power than the Honda. I think our power is okay.
Well, it sounds like he is damning by implication the aerodynamics of this Williams chassis. They have a new car, the FW13, coming online later this year. Riccardo Patrese has been about as glum all weekend, as you saw him there. As we mentioned earlier, the Williams team with the new Renault V10 engine was expected to challenge for preeminence in Formula One, and they just have not been able to get it together.
Johnny Herbert in the Benetton pulls into the pit.
Let's go down to John.
Johnny Herbert, who has come into the pits, is actually his second pit stop for this Mexican Grand Prix. It looks like a routine tire change, a little trouble with the left rear, and now for some reason they are inspecting the suspension and the left front. Johnny Herbert does not want to go out. They are trying to communicate with him. The radio is not working. They are sending him out, but he does not look happy at all. He was trying to communicate another problem with the car that definitely was not solved during that pit stop. Back to you.
John, if you're there with the cameraman, can you have a look at that left front tire? Is there anything of it left at all, or is it already picked up some gravel that I looked on the tire?
The left front tire, it had some graining on the tire. Of course, with that very fast sweeper, it would grain to the outside, but it was not blistered. It looked in pretty good shape. We will find out if those are Caesar blues and get back to you.
Okay.
There you see the tire off of that Benetton Ford. As we mentioned, or David did earlier, they did not get their new Ford engines in time for this race, so they're running old cars and old chassis. We're back watching Riccardo Patrese, now running in second position, some 39 seconds down to our leader, Ayrton Senna. But behind him, another story in the race, behind the Lotus of Nelson Piquet, is the third-place car, the Tyrrell of Michele Alboreto. A mere 42 seconds down to the leader as we watch Nigel Mansell taking the longest walk in racing. Before the race is over, he is headed for the trailer.
Yeah, normally he'd be headed on the plane home, but of course this week they're all going straight from Mexico to some place in the States. Most of them are going to San Francisco or spend a few days in the sunshine down in Arizona. Of course, Nigel, being such an avid golfer, will no doubt go to some of the best courses that North America has to offer.
I was about to say.
He's got the best golf course in the world.
He knows exactly where he's going. He's headed for the golf course, is Nigel Mansell, a scratch golfer, once played in the Australian Open.
Ayrton Senna still maintains the lead. His tires, as we see them sweep across the screen there, look okay. I'm still surprised that Alan Prost couldn't at least unlap himself, but seems to be incapable of doing it.
A great crowd here on hand in Mexico, including a great number of Americans, some of whom have traveled with the Formula One Spectators Association. George Goad and Pam Lawson do a fine job of keeping Formula One fans and members of their organization up to date with all of the action. They go to virtually all the races on the Formula One circuit. If you're a member of FOSA and you don't get to go to the race, you get about a 4-page newsletter after every event that details every aspect of qualifying and the race. The only American publication devoted exclusively to Formula One. For more information on becoming a member of the Formula One Spectators Association in the United States, you can call area code 213-658-5884. Talk to George or Pam about becoming a member of FOSA, and maybe we'll see you at a Formula One race sometime in the future. There you see Gabriele Tarquini, I believe that's Stefan Johansson in the Onyx making his way around, and this, the man of the hour, Ayrton Senna, shooting for his 17th Formula One victory. And boy, in the past couple of years, he has just made a shamble of that much-respected table of Formula One champions and victories over the years. Alain Prost, who has spent more than a decade in the sport to get his record 35 victories, and here Ayrton Senna, since 1984-85, has racked up 16.
And obviously at the moment, looks like there's no signs of him stopping. The only man at the moment who's even half capable of stopping him with his car is Alain Prost, his teammate, and or Nigel Mansell. If they can just get a bit more reliability out of that Ferrari V12 and semi-automatic gearbox. Semi-automatic gearbox, I believe, is such an integral part of the car. There's no way they could drop it for a few races while they develop and work on it.
Let's go back down the pit road and John Bizignano.
Another victim of the Mexican Grand Prix, Derek Warwick. You worked your way all the way up to 6th place. What happened?
Well, after the second start, the second lap into the new race, we lost third gear. And third gear on this circuit is very important, but I carried on. It never really held me up that much. And then on the last lap there, going into the turn 3, as I came out, the car just stopped. I had all my electrics, but the engine just stopped. So something just stopped on the engine.
There's been a lot of discussion about tires. Some people going out on Bs and Cs. What did you go out on, and did you feel comfortable on them?
Well, I started on the harder compound Bs, thinking that from half distance on that we would have an edge, and I was starting to catch Nannini, so it looked like our plan was right. But another day.
Another day in Phoenix, 1 week's time. Good luck, Derek.
Cheers.
Back to the booth.
Thank you, John and Derek. It is tough when you drop out of a race. We appreciate Derek taking the time to chat with us. As you watch Ayrton Senna make his way around, look at the shape of the race car. Following Gerhard Berger's enormous accident in Imola, the Formula One constructors have gotten together, and they have been told, essentially, by the overall world governing body for motorsport, FISA, that they will have different race cars next year, which I'm sure is a surprise to the men in charge of the budgets of Formula One. Formula One officials want the cars to be stronger. They want the sides of the cars to come up higher on each side of the driver for greater protection. They want greater fuel tank protection. In fact, they're even talking about decreasing the size of the fuel tank. And the question in everyone's mind then is, does that mean that refueling during the race comes back to Formula One? In any event, with new cars coming online all year long, we expect to see changes in 1990, and that has not gone down well with some of the constructors.
Well, of course, the other thing is there's semi-serious talk, which I find unbelievable, semi-serious talk in pit lane of somehow penalizing these McLaren Hondas to try and let somebody else win a race. And, of course, unlike the SCCA, where if the Trans Am car keeps on winning, you stick another 100, or in IMSA, where if the turbocharger cars have got too much horsepower, you just restrict them a little bit more. Obviously, in Formula One, it would be impossible with the sort of money that Honda are paying, $50 million a year reputed development money on these Formula One engines. You can hardly waltz up to them after the race and say, oh, by the way, next time you race, you're going to have to weigh another 100 pounds. So I just can't see it happening. This is the only truly unfettered and top class of racing left. I don't think they could fool about it like that. But a lot of people are wanting to know what they can do. There is a man, Michael Alboreto, in the Tyrrell, as you can see, still unmarked, unpainted, unsponsored, running in a very, very nice third spot.
Hats off to Ken Tyrrell, whose organization has been such an integral part of Formula One for so many years. Jackie Stewart drove for him. Michele Alboreto drove at another time for Ken Tyrrell. In fact, Michele Alboreto, prior to 1989 in the non-turbo formula, had the last victory for a normally aspirated car in Detroit back in 1983, I believe. So Michele Alboreto back with Ken Tyrrell. At 65 years of age, still one of the great personalities of Formula One. Right in front of him, you see one of the new Minardis in its new paint job. That's a 1989 machine, reflecting new sponsorship that they have picked up this year. The Minardis have a very long wheelbase car. In fact, the mechanics are joking that they now have the only station wagon in Formula One racing.
Well, now Michele Alboreto having a bit of a job to get round him, goes down the inside there, going to outbrake him going into the turn at the end of the fast straight here, front straightaway. As those cars approach that parallel, then you could just see the difference in the way the cars are sprung. The Minardi was bouncing around, looked most ungainly. The Tyrrell looks very, very secure all the way around this track.
After a terrible car and a terrible season last year, this new machine working well for Tyrrell. And we asked Michele Alboreto if coming back to Tyrrell is like a homecoming for him.
Yeah, likes coming home, and I worked also with Harvey Postlethwaite and Jean-Jacques Bijot, and I worked with them in the Ferrari many years ago. So I have a good feeling. The problem is we have not the right financial support while we're looking for that, especially if the car will be good, like I hope.
Well, the car certainly appears to be good right now, and Michele Alboreto wearing the blue and yellow on his helmet, indicative of the national colors of Sweden, because Michele Alboreto's great driving hero in his early days was the late Ronnie Peterson, a great Swedish driver. Let's go back to John on pit road.
We were unable to get Nigel Mansell. He's already headed for his helicopter out of here, but he did tell me that it was not the engine, it was the gearbox. And they thought the gearbox was going to make it through this race because of the less shifts necessary to complete the distance. All the oil went out of the gearbox. The reason he continued on was at the first puff of smoke, he had only lost a couple gears. He was going to try and stay out there. Then the thing just totally gave up, actually exploded behind him. So Nigel Mansell out, I believe, for the third time due to the semi-automatic Ferrari gearbox, right after a very fine track record, I may say. Back to the booth.
Well, so we're wrong once again. It is not the engine but the gearbox that lets down Ferrari one more time. You're watching live the Grand Prix of Mexico from Mexico City, and we'll be back in just a moment. The Grand Prix of Mexico continues here in Mexico City. Don't forget, coming up later tonight, great live college baseball action. It's the West Regional NCAA College Baseball Playoff, with at stake a chance to represent the region and go all the way to the College World Series beginning in June here on ESPN. Tonight, the matchup, Cal State Long Beach against Arizona. The West Regional NCAA College Baseball Playoff coming your way at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific, live right here on ESPN. Here in Mexico, Brazil's Ayrton Senna has Alain Prost, his teammate, right behind him. Prost is one lap down with 10 laps to go. Live here on ESPN, the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico. With all of the money, we talked about it earlier, the multi-million-dollar budgets being spent in Formula One, as we get back to the Tyrrell, Michele Alboreto now running in third position. With all of the money spent, it's hard to believe that since 1986, the beginning of that season, only 5 drivers have won a Formula One race. Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Gerhard Berger, Nigel Mansell, and Nelson Piquet have won 51 straight races between them. The gang of 5 they are now known as here in Formula One.
Well, it's time they gave up then. Alboreto has finally got around Nelson Piquet, who's definitely holding him up there. And I've no doubt he's really anxious to get on the program here, because he's only just about 7.5 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese He's only got about 9 laps left to do it. Patrese will obviously have more power. I think that's one of the problems that the Tyrrell has got, is it probably a little bit down for power, but if it starts performing as well as this, I'm sure that they will be able to get some more power. As you can see, Alboreto using all the road and a bit more, using his curves very, very well, and the car looking unbelievably stable when it does that. The car is obviously very, very well sprung and suspended.
Kelly Alboreto driving for 65-year-old Ken Chopper Tyrrell, known as Chopper for the axe symbol that he used to carry on his sports cars when he drove as a young man. John Bizignano is down on pit road with more on Gerhard Berger's retirement.
Well, while in the Ferrari pit talking to the mechanics and so forth over Nigel Mansell's problem, we got the correct data relative to his teammate Gerhard Berger. He certainly did look weak, and he was glad to be out of the race car and out of the race. The problem coming from his accident 5 weeks ago. But what actually made him stop again was the Ferrari semi-automatic gearbox. It was not a mechanical problem this time, as it was with his teammate. It was an electrical problem. Electrical sensors do select the gears off of the back of the steering wheel and feed the information to the semi-automatic transmission. So both Ferraris out of the Mexican Grand Prix in what everyone hoped would be a revolutionary experience for the team with the semi-automatic gearbox. Gerhard Berger said to the mechanic that I talked to, he will be fit for Phoenix, and he physically would be able to complete the Grand Prix.
Thank you, John.
We see Alan Prost there. I don't like to be a bringer of bad news, but on the last shot we had of him going down the straight, it looked to me like his right front has got a very dark streak around just in. See it there? You can see it on the sun shining on it.
To the left now, to the right as he completes the turn.
Yeah.
Now to the left.
His right front, our left on the screen. You can see that black mark all around the middle of the tyre. He's whistled by Ayrton Senna at last, and I also just happened to look out of the window here and see the old McLaren mechanic getting the tyres out. It looks to me as if his right front tyre may be on the way out now. And this again, with 8 laps, he could perhaps hang in.
This is unusual for Prost, who is known as such a technician, so smooth with the race car. He takes such good care of his tires. In fact, we saw him at Rio go 40-some-odd laps in a race that saw 2 and 3 tire stops for everyone else. Prost went 2/3 of the race on one set of tires when he lost his clutch and couldn't stop in the pits.
Precisely. I mean, he has been recognized for the last 4 or 5 years as the absolute past master of looking after every aspect of his car, and that certainly included tires and fuel, when fuel was such an important part of the turbo engine era. And he's had a bit of bad luck with his tires in the last this season. Well, Rio was totally beyond his control because he lost his clutch and he knew he couldn't stop, because once he stopped, he'd never get the thing started.
We are going to run a little bit long with this Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico, so we'll take a quick time out, bring you up to date on progress of the Southwestern Bell Classic and all of the action that will be coming your way later today here on ESPN. There you see Alain Prost, and the mystery remains whether or not that right front tire is going to give him problems, as you see him making his way through the Peraltada onto the front straightaway once again. What a bittersweet day for Alain Prost of France, but what a glorious day for this man, Ayrton Senna. We'll be back to Mexico in a moment. Back at Mexico, Ayrton Senna is your leader, followed by Riccardo Patrese, Michele Alboreto, Alessandro Nannini, Alain Prost, and Gabriele Tarquini in the last points-paying position. Now that we've taken care of a little commerce, let's go to Jim Kelly at the Southwestern Bell Classic, caught up on the action there. Jim? Thanks, Jim. And back here in Mexico City, this man, Ayrton Senna, in the striped yellow helmet, is leading the way. Back in 1985, he won his first victory leading from the pole in Portugal, driving in the rain. And there you see the Brazilian flag and a great crowd of supporters for Ayrton Senna. It will be the same again today, it would appear. He has led from the pole, his 33rd, tying the record of the late Jim Clark for career Formula One poles, and well on his way to win number 17. Running down the field, Senna, of course, is your leader, 38 seconds behind now, Riccardo Patrese in the Williams. In third position, Michele Alboreto. Fourth is Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton. Fifth, Alain Prost. Sixth, Gabriele Tarquini. Seventh, Eddie Cheever, up from 23rd spot on the grid. Good run for him in the Arrows. Olivier Griard runs eighth. In ninth is Martin Brundle in the Brabham. 10th, his teammate Stefano Modena. In 11th, Nelson Piquet in the Lotus, up from 26th starting spot, is the 3-time world champ. In 12th is Christian Danner in the German Real car. Alex Caffey follows in the Dallara in 13th position. Rene Arnoux has the Ligier running 3 laps down in 14th, followed by Johnny Herbert in the 15th and last car still on the racetrack, also 3 laps down.
But another highly significant thing is that just a few moments ago, Michele Alboreto was over 7 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese, and he's now less than 4.5 seconds behind him. So it looks as if second spot could be there for the Tyrrell as this race unfolds. Alan Prost, of course, now actually leading, as we see, on the road, but of course he is really a lap down on his teammate Ayrton Senna, who we see here. There, this guy in front of us with the flag, he is right underneath our commentary box and is right opposite the McLaren team, and he is directing the team what to do to Ayrton Senna. He's telling them to slow him down now, and he makes hand signals over to the team to tell them how to dictate
now
their
that
drive.
is a scoop, and here we thought Ron Dennis and Gordon Murray and all those little engine boffins from Honda were the ones who were actually calling the shots.
This guy's been going absolutely berserk the whole race, and now he's starting to dictate the pace of our leader.
It has been a fine race this afternoon, but it's hard to beat a man with the skills and the temperament of Ayrton Senna, going for his 3rd straight victory of 1989, and moving along well in defense of his 1988 World Championship.
Scary thought is that this man could, at the moment, win every single one of these races this year. I mean, it is certainly within the realm of possibility. Most unlikely. But
not Nigel Mansell having won Rio, he can win 15 of the 16.
That's right there.
And that would certainly be unprecedented. If you haven't been with us from the start, we ran less than 2 laps when 3 cars flew off the racetrack at various points on the track. As a result, we had a red flag. The race was declared null and void, and we started once again. But unfortunately, a bad situation for Alain Prost, who chose the wrong brand of tires, the wrong compounds, and has stopped twice since then. Alain Prost now making his way along in 5th position, 12 seconds behind 4th place Sandro Nannini, who in turn is 23 seconds down to Michele Alboreto, story of the day in the Tyrrell, 6 seconds behind Riccardo Patrese, who is a fat 31 seconds down to Ayrton Senna, this man. And so it will appear, in fact, that Senna is being slowed down by Team McLaren.
I think Senna is obviously being slowed down. There's absolutely no point in him hurrying. He's well over half a minute in front of Riccardo Patrese, but Patrese must have got the message about Alboreto. He has increased that lead back up to about 6 seconds, and with only 5 laps left, that's probably just to be on the safe side, because that allows him any room for error or getting caught out by a back marker in traffic or so on.
You saw that long mirage effect. The heat is building here in the late afternoon in Mexico City. We'll take a quick time out and come back as the conclusion approaches at the Formula One Mexican Grand Prix. Stay with us. Mexico, coming to you live here on ESPN. Bob Varsha and David Hobbs at our announce position. John Bizignano doing yeoman service down there on pit road in what has been an action-packed race. There have been all sorts of pit stops. We have had cars run off the racetrack. We have had just heartbreaking disappointment, certainly for the Ferrari team. Gerhard Berger making his first start after this terrifying accident 5 weeks ago at Imola, Italy. But both he and Nigel Mansell were let down by the futuristic semi-automatic electronic 7-speed gearboxes in their Ferraris. They are both out of the race, as are one of the Williams cars, one of the Tyrrells. It has been filled with attrition. 11 cars now out of the event. Johnny Herbert now last in line, 3 laps down to this man, who gets the continuing signals, 3 laps to go from the pits of the McLaren team. Your order, Senna, Patrese, and the second Williams as the team looks on. Those are the Honda engineers in their red shirts. And I've been told by people who should know that as these men are watching these computer monitors, monitoring every possible function of their 3.5-liter Formula One engine, this information is also going back via hard line to Japan, where Honda technicians at their headquarters near Tokyo are also watching the inside of their engines as they work in this Formula One race.
Well, of course, the Honda quest for excellence is not just here on the racetrack, it's in everything they do. And I just think this makes a very salutary warning to the rest of the car industry, not just the racing industry, to just keep their eyes open, because the Japanese car industry does present an incredible threat to the establishment as we know it. And this Honda racing program has demonstrated just how strong they can be when they make the commitment. And that's exactly what they've done here. They've committed themselves to Formula One. And if they're going to be in Formula One and spend millions of dollars a year, they're going to win.
And they have sent a shiver through the sports car world by leaking information that they may be interested in going Group 6 see sports car racing, perhaps trying to take on the 24 hours of Le Mans. And in fact, the admiration in which Honda is held are such that Toyota, I believe it was, has announced that they will end their motorsports program if Honda intends to come into sports car racing with the intensity and the budget that they have applied to Formula One.
Well, of course, coming from Toyota, who's the second largest car manufacturer in the world now, that's some pretty serious backing down talk, I'd say.
And don't forget, Le Mans will be coming your way here on ESPN 2 weeks from now, June 10th and 11th. We will be over at Les Sauts. I will be in the announced position, and my colleague here, David Hobbs, will be attempting to prove that even at his advanced age, he can still get a car around the racetrack. Of course, we never doubted that, David.
Wow. Yep, 2 weeks today, we'll be sunning ourselves in the French sunshine, I hope, as Ayrton Senna is sunning himself here in Mexico today. The rain clouds never materialized. The temperature stayed up, which played into his hands, making that correct tyre decision earlier on, and just swanning his way to a very, very easy victory here over Riccardo Patrese. The gap has dropped now to only half a minute, so getting quite flowing in the last 2 or 3 laps of this race.
There seem to be no chinks in the armor of this man. His skills are absolutely consummate. He knows which way to set up his car. He knows which tires to choose. He knows when his engine is working well and when it is not. He spends long hours with his mechanics and devotes himself totally to the concept of being Formula One. I think Gerhard Berger said it best over the weekend. Ayrton Senna will hold the Formula One World Championship for a long time to come and will reset the standards because he is simply the hungriest, the most intense, and he wants that championship more than anyone else. We are now on the last lap of the 2.7-mile circuit named for the brothers Ricardo and Pedro Rodriguez here in the heart of Mexico City.
Ricardo, of course, was himself killed on this racetrack, and his brother Pedro was killed at Hockenheim some years later. A very tragic end to two extremely fast drivers back in their era in the late 50s and 60s.
The home of the racetrack named for them is actually a neighborhood known as Iztaclan, one of 16 neighborhoods in the megalopolis of Mexico City. This particular neighborhood has its own mayor and its own civil government, and it also has 1.2 million inhabitants. One of 16 neighborhoods at 1.2 million, larger than most cities, obviously. It is a teeming, elegant, and historic metropolis is Mexico City, one of 16 stops coming your way on Formula One 1989. We'll be bringing most of them to you here on ESPN, and we'll hope you'll join us for them all. Next will be Phoenix, Arizona, from the ancient city of Mexico's capital to the very new city of Phoenix, Arizona in the United States, one of the fastest street circuits anywhere. It is wide, a lot of 90-degree corners, a lot of acceleration, a lot of braking. Should make for a very exciting Formula One race coming your way next Sunday at this time. Final turn through the Peraltada, and Ayrton Senna will rack up victory number 3 of the 1989 season. There you see the checkered flag being walked out and waved for the 29-year-old world champion.
In the Marlboro McLaren Honda team there as they signify yet another crushing defeat of the opposition by their man Senna. Alan Prost comes in a lowly fifth, only scoring himself 2 points, but as I said earlier, that won't matter in the long run because he'll just pick those up very easily. And Senna, arm raised, there we see our man in front of the pits here. Honda's here, Santa Fe.
Yes, and there you see Joe Ramirez, who is of Mexican extraction, and he is the team manager for the McLaren effort. He is a very popular man with the local media this weekend. And we should also point out, behind Senna, Patrese, Alboreto, Nannini, and Prost is Gabriel Tarquini with his second point-scoring finish in 3 races this year for the AGS team as he goes out the side of your picture. We'll be back to sum things up after this short message. You're watching live from Mexico City.